foreseeable was foreseen, as Nick Nurse was officially let go by the Toronto Raptors. This was a rumor for pretty much all season, and now he's officially free to go look elsewhere. Now, very likely he's going to be looking for a head coaching job. I don't think he's the problem in Toronto at all. He's a championship winning coach in Toronto, gave them their first NBA championship. He's been with them since 2013-2014, although until the 2018-2019 season, he was an assistant coach. Then he ended up taking over, and they ended up winning the NBA championship that year, right? That was the year that Kawhi Leonard went there, and since then, it has kind of just tapered off every year. Then he does have a record of 227 wins, 163 losses, so as a head coach, he has a 58% win rate, which, again, I don't really blame him for the disaster and debacle that Toronto has been lately. That team just doesn't work as a whole. They should have blown that team up this last offseason at the trade deadline. There was all the rumors, all the speculations, everything, and they're kind of just stuck in their ways with this team. And this team just isn't good enough. They have some really great pieces, some really solid pieces, but they don't have like a full team. There's a reason you need a point guard, a shooting guard, a center, things like that. And it'll be interesting to see what Toronto does this offseason, who they hire as the head coach. It's looking like Ime Udoka is like the lead candidate. I could see them signing him. And regardless, I don't even think he's going to do a much better job, if at all, just because, again, the roster isn't where it needs to be to actually be a real contending team. Now, maybe they'll be slightly better, whatever, but regardless, I think Nick Nurse wasn't the problem. I just think it was time for them both to part ways, and now Nick Nurse, he definitely could be a candidate for multiple teams. But one team that I'd actually like to see is the Lakers, right? This is Laker Channel. I'm talking about Nick Nurse because I wouldn't mind seeing him on the Lakers. Now, this isn't to replace Darvin Ham. I know a lot of people are going to look at this and go, yes, replace Darvin Ham and get Nick Nurse. No, it's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is bringing him on as the lead assistant, as the head assistant. Now, when Darvin Ham got the job, which I was all for, and look, I believe Darvin Ham has done a fine job. Has he been perfect? No coach is. But given all of the circumstances this year, I think he has done about as good of a job as you can do. I don't know very many people that could do better. Lakers Nation even was going after Phil Jackson when he was the coach. It's part of the coach. People want to blame somebody, you blame the coach. It happens with all teams, all sports, right? Coach is usually the first one that's let go. Darvin Ham's done a fine job. Lakers are in the playoffs. They're at home now. Very likely should win both home games and very likely should move on to the next round. Darvin Ham has been a big part of that. But regardless, when Darvin Ham was originally signed, the idea was to get a more experienced head coach to kind of fill in as the lead assistant job, and they didn't end up going that route. I think that would be good. Darvin Ham is likely only going to get better, only going to improve more as he continues to coach. Also, he is under contract for 4 years. They are still paying Frank Vogel. They're not going to fire a second coach to then bring in another coach, and now the Lakers are paying 3 coaches. It's not going to happen. So everyone's vision and idea of Lakers firing Darvin Ham, it's not happening, at least for the next few seasons. Now, maybe in 2-3 seasons, maybe, but the next year or two, you're with Darvin Ham whether you like it or not. And so I wouldn't mind seeing a guy like Nick Nurse, who has head coaching experience, who has a championship pedigree, which Darvin Ham has won a championship as a coach, too, something else. And it's not like Nick Nurse has 3 or 4 of them. He has one just like Darvin Ham does. But Nick Nurse coming in to kind of round out that coaching staff, I think would just be brilliant. Now, the big question is, would Nick Nurse want and be willing to take on an assistant role, even as a lead assistant, as opposed to go getting a head coaching gig elsewhere? Again, he was an assistant coach for 5 seasons. It might be something that he's into. It might be something that he's looking for. Now, granted, most guys, they have to start as an assistant coach and then they work their way up into the head coach. So that could have been all that is. But what other options are out there that might be super appealing to Nick Nurse? Now, in the offseason, it's very possible that there could be a coaching position that opens up that maybe Nick Nurse goes, hey, I would love to have this team. I would love to get there. Also, money is a big thing, right? If Lakers are willing to pay him assistant coach money and somebody else is willing to pay him ridiculous head coaching money, probably going to take the ridiculous head coaching money. But I do think it would be a good situation for Nick Nurse here with the Lakers. Also, it would keep some pressure on Darvin Ham, right? Because you have that guy that if push comes to shove and worst case scenario, if Darvin Ham doesn't improve over the years, then you have Nick Nurse who can step in and play that role, or just to give different looks. Like Darvin Ham has done a great job being a player coach. He's done a great job with like the defense schemes. We have top defense for a reason. You don't have a top 10 offense and a top 10 defense without coaching. You just don't. It doesn't matter how good of players you have. You gotta have coaching to a degree. Guys that are calling the plays, running the rotations, running the sets, all of that stuff. Guys have to execute, right? So many people are so willing to blame a coach rather than the players themselves. The players have to do their job. You could have the best coaching staff ever, right? I mean, seriously, you could have the dream coaching staff. You could have like John Wooden, Red Auerbach, Phil Jackson, like the list goes. You could have all of them on the same coaching staff, but if guys don't play and guys don't show up, it's not on the coach. The coach's job is to get the guys ready, of course, have everyone have an understanding of what their role is, what the job is, what the task is, but it's up to the players to execute. And so having a guy in Darvin Ham who is that motivator, he is that head coach, he is the guy that is the player coach, the guy that, many people love Doc Rivers. And what has Doc Rivers done? Like, Doc Rivers is considered one of the greatest coaches of all time. He's been on like every list in like the top 10 coaching of all time. What has Doc Rivers ever done? Doc Rivers has the record for most 3-1 leads blown and has won NBA championship with a team that like me and you probably could have coached, right? I mean, with Rondo and you had Eddie House, and Perkins, you had Wallace, you had Ray Allen, Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, like the list goes. That team was insane. And guess what? He only won one championship with that team, right? So coaching can be misleading, but you do need somebody that can bring everybody together. Like, why is Phil Jackson considered one of, if not the greatest coach of all time? He was really good at managing players, really good at managing egos. Like, the offensive schemes that he ran, he didn't invent those schemes. Like, the triangle offense, he didn't invent the triangle offense. He was taught it, right? Like, all of these things, like, you have a coach that implements and takes pieces over the course of his career and then implements it into the team that he eventually gets structured on. And Darvin Ham's running the same time. Darvin Ham coaches exactly how like half of the coaches in the league coach. I mean, even Mike Malone, right? Same thing. Does the shift changes, 1 in, 3 out, or 1 in, 4 out, all that. Like Nick Nurse did the same thing. They didn't have the shooters. Nick Nurse is exactly like Darvin Ham. Like, right? You'll see him like completely flood and rotations are questionable and all that. Like, Nick Nurse isn't really an upgrade over Darvin Ham. Like, if you look at actually watch Nick Nurse coach and then you look at Darvin Ham, they are very identical in coaching styles because Darvin Ham coaches the way that 90% of the coaches coach. It's just how it is in today's NBA. You don't think that when Denver loses a game, you don't think that they're questioning Mike Malone. Again, what has Mike Malone done, right? He's had one of the best teams in Denver that Denver's ever had and still hasn't won anything. It's just Ty Lue has arguably the best. He's considered a great coach. People want to have him and all that stuff. And they're probably a first-round exit and haven't done anything. But is that his fault? No, they blame the players. Well, why isn't it the same thing for the Lakers? Like the list goes on and on. But if you could add a guy like Nick Nurse, who has the experience and the pedigree and won a championship and understands, the X's and O's and ins and outs, and you can add him to the bench, it's just value. It's just knowledge, experience. It just gives you something to kind of to add to your pot of wealth when it comes to a coaching staff and organization, and add some more structure, some more stability. And to have these two on the sidelines, I think would be huge for the Lakers, because now you have two coaches that, yes, are very similar. Again, they're very similar coaches, but having their minds, it gives you perspective. It gives you different looks, and it gives Darvin Ham somebody that he very likely respects, somebody that he understands, like, hey, this was a winning head coach. Let's talk, and I look at it like this. How do you see it? Oh, well, I see it like this. Okay, well, can we find a middle? Right? It's always good to have somebody that has that that pedigree. Like, even however successful you are, whatever you've achieved or accomplished, there's always somebody that's done as much or if not more. And if you can surround yourself with those people, you're going to be better, right? You are going to see things differently. You're going to be able to adjust to things differently. It just becomes different environment in general. So I do like the idea of bringing Nick Nurse in to be alongside Darvin Ham. Darvin Ham is still going to be the head coach. But if Nick Nurse is willing to take that assistant job as that lead assistant, I think you do it. I think you jump on it. Now, will the Lakers? Probably not. Will Nick Nurse want to? Probably not. He's probably going to want to stay a head coach. I don't think he's going to want to go from grinding as an assistant to finally getting a head coaching gig, winning an NBA championship to like going back on the bench. But you never know. I mean, he may just look at the landscape and go, yeah, there's nothing here I'm really interested in. Let me come over here with the Lakers for a year or two until something opens up that I do like, and then I can go and switch over and go to that team. It could help, right? Especially if, whether we win the championship this year or not, you still at it. Like, even if we win the whole thing this year, I still think you bring in Nick Nurse, right? You can always be better. Same thing if we end up falling short. Say we lose in the second or third round or NBA Finals. Bring Nick Nurse in and let him kind of be added to the staff to get better. If you have an opportunity to get better, not just from a roster standpoint, but from a coaching standpoint, why wouldn't you want to do that? To me, it's a no-brainer. So if we can bring Nick Nurse in, I would love it. Let's bring him in. If not, then hey, it's all right. I'm riding with this team. But anyway, as always, this is the discussion, so I pass the question on to you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? Do you agree? Yeah, bring Nick Nurse in. Bring him in as an assistant. Do you not? Just say no. Keep the staff as it is. However you feel, whatever your thoughts are, love to hear it.